Welcome to the weekly Lawrence City Commission meeting. This is a continuation from the meeting that started this afternoon, in which we had a study session and reviewed the information that was presented by a task force regarding retiree location in Lawrence. So we're continuing from that meeting at this time. There's no recognition proclamations this evening. So the first item on the agenda will be the consent agenda, and all matters listed below on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Note here that we had previously on the first published agenda had an item on the consent agenda that has been moved to item number 3 on the general agenda, and that item is receive staff and consultant briefing on infrastructure planning. Oops, sorry. Which one is it, 2?
It's still on consent.
Beg your pardon. Beg your pardon, it didn't get moved. Okay, so I will remove.
It has been moved. I think what you all have is an agenda that hasn't been updated. My apologies.
Okay.
I think we posted that a little bit late, but it is now moved to the regular agenda item number 3.
And I don't have it right here in front of me. Will you title it what it is, please?
It's the consider authorizing staff to request grant funds from the EARN grant for Douglas County Sheriff's Office and Lawrence Police Department, enhancement of public safety for downtown Lawrence through the use of video technology.
And that's on the regular agenda for item number 3, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that, we don't have to remove that. It's already been moved from the consent to the general agenda. Additionally, I'd like to remove from the consent agenda the appointments of 2 individuals to the Lawrence Planning Commission, Lawrence Douglas County Planning Commission. Is there any other items the City Commission would like to remove from the consent agenda for separate discussion and vote?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any items any member of the public would like to remove from the consent agenda for a separate discussion and vote? Okay, hearing no requests for additional comment, different votes. So the balance of the consent agenda, along with claims totaling $2,414,582.04 and the payroll of $1,945,945.30. I'd entertain a motion at this time for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved Amick, second Cromwell. All in favor say aye. Aye. Approved 5-0. Okay. And we have 2 appointments tonight to the Lawrence Douglas County Planning Commission. Is Brian Culver in the room? Can you please come to the podium? And is John Jostron here? John was here a little while ago and promised me he'd be back. I just wanted to take a brief moment to talk about these 2 individuals that I hope we're going to make an appointment to the Planning Commission tonight. First of all, Brian Culver is currently serving on the Lawrence Douglas County Planning Commission in the unexpired term of Hugh Carter, who then ran for City Commission and was elected. And so I thought I'd just give you a little information on Brian. First of all, he's a KU grad, business administration. He's worked as a financial planner for Emprise Financial Advisors. Currently he works for the People's Bank, and he is a wealth management officer there. He has been very active in the community with having volunteered at headquarters. He has been a member of and a graduate of Leadership Lawrence, and as I said, he currently is serving on the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission is a big time-consuming job that really takes a lot to do it right, and so I think it's nice to recognize these people for what they do. He's serving right now, but so Brian Culver, I'm going to ask that the Commission appoint you to a new 3-year term. John Jostron just entered the room. Step up, John, please. John's also a KU grad. He has a business degree and then a law degree. John has worked in governmental relations and nonprofit consulting in a private law practice. He then worked as an assistant for the governmental regulations for the University of Kansas, in which he's got a whole variety of things he was involved in. He was a vice president for governmental relations for the Wichita Area Chamber of Commerce through 86 and 87. And then he worked as a deputy assistant secretary of state, assistant secretary of state, and special assistant secretary of state for the office of the Kansas Secretary of State from 79 to 86. John also is the chair of our Lawrence Sister Cities Advisory Board, and he's worked very hard. He's done quite a nice job with reorganizing that and getting things really rolling. I was a member of that, and that's where I got to know John. So anyway, I wanted to introduce John. We ask a lot of these people. There's a lot of work to do. We need good advice, and they're the people who really ferret out the information and give us something to start with. So I appreciate your willingness to want to accept this appointment, and we look forward to working with you and hope you do well. So if any one of you'd like to say anything, please do. Okay.
Look forward to the challenge.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I'd entertain a motion for those appointments.
So made.
Second.
Moved Cromwell, second Carter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, 5-0. Approved, 5-0. Opposed, none. That didn't go over so good.
If you'd have said something, maybe we'd have voted for it.
Yeah, it was close. Yeah. All right. Next on the agenda is the city manager's report.
Mayor, members of the commission, just a few items in this week's report to highlight. The city maintains approximately 15 miles of the Kansas River levee and the Mud Creek levee. It's a major undertaking that the city received when the levee was constructed. One of the things that we have to do to make sure that it is appropriately maintained is to do certain weed and vegetation abatement. We've had a few questions about some of the spraying. In regards to that, we have stepped up on some of our notice efforts. As a matter of fact, one of the citizens that brought it to our attention appreciated some of the additional notice that we've provided. So you see some of the information there in regards to our efforts to make sure the public knows what's going on. We've got a unique facility in that it's not only a levee, it's also a recreational area as well, and we want to try and keep all of those purposes intact and avoid any conflicts. So appreciate everybody's work on that and the special attention that we need to pay in regards to notification to the public. Doing a little bit more in regards to making our website and some of our mobile users' ability to access certain city features. Appreciate the work that the city staff that's been involved with that as well, and see a little bit of information in regards to that. Then we did celebrate National Public Works Week. Chuck thinks that's every week, but it's not quite. But you got a little bit of memo there, and then I'd encourage your work on the trivia page to see how well you know things about the city, some interesting facts and figures about all the great things Public Works Department's up to. So commend it all to your reading, and be happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
You weren't suggesting the city commission should go through a public discourse on the trivia page at this time, were you?
I would encourage you to do what I did, which is to read it and then quickly check the answers to educate yourself about what all we do.
All right. Okay, any questions for the city manager? All right, thank you. All right. Now we'll start with the regular agenda. The first item is to consider adopting on first reading ordinance number 8746, authorizing the issuance of industrial revenue bonds to refinance existing bonds for Lawrence Memorial Hospital, not to exceed $10,500,000. Staff, please.
Mayor, Commissioners, I think this is all straightforward. I'm not necessarily seeing anybody from bond council here, if anybody here or not, or anybody here from the hospital. So I guess they trust us with $10 million. believe it's all straightforward as outlined in the request. I know that the hospital and their attorneys and their bond counsel attorneys have been working on this. I think it's all straightforward and appropriate. This is the only way that LMH issues debt is through industrial revenue bonds that are issued through the city. It's defined as conduit financing. We don't have any financial liability for this debt. The bondholders must look to the issuer of industrial revenue bonds, in this case LMH, for the revenues. And of course, as we know, LMH is in great financial stewardship under Gene Meyer and their Board of Trustees leadership, and we've been, I think, briefed on that over time in regards to their financial abilities. And I think they've recently received a bond upgrade, which is unique in these financial times. So I think it's all appropriate, and I think if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them, and we'll proceed.
Questions?
Mayor, just procedurally, do we have to hold a public hearing on this item?
It's not a public hearing item. I mean, you can ask for public comment, of course, under your protocols, but it's not that type of a hearing.
Okay.
Other questions? Any member of the public wish to speak to this? Commission?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Moved Cromwell, second Dever, to adopt ordinance number 8746. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item number 2, consider approving a temporary use permit upon review for Liberty Hall, the 100th year anniversary event, allowing the use of sidewalk and parking stalls in front of Liberty Hall, and the closure of the 100 block of East 7th Street from 1 p.m. to midnight on Friday, June 22nd, 2012.
Good evening, Commissioners. As requested, we revised this request to move the majority of the event onto 7th Street instead of Massachusetts Street. As you can see on your on the map here, I can get that a little bigger. They would also use the sidewalk and parking stalls in front of the Liberty Hall building on Massachusetts Street. We would recommend that they bring us a traffic control plan that includes barricades up to the federal standards for traffic control for this sort of thing. And we sent notice to all the property owners and tenants on the section of 7th Street that you can see there. I've received no comment from anyone to date. The applicant told me that they were contacting those property owners also to speak with them about the event. And that's an update on this request.
Questions?
Well, it looks like
Just
they
like-
did what you wanted.
Just like we're looking for. Anybody, pardon me, anybody from the public here to speak to this item, please? Please take the podium and state your name, please.
Rob Fitzgerald, Liberty Hall. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't have any questions.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. It'll work for you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Anybody else? Entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 8735.
So moved.
Moved Dever,
Second.
second Amix. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Item number 3 then is to authorize staff to request grant funds from the 2012 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant for Douglas County Sheriff's Office, Lawrence Police Department, public to enhance public safety downtown through the use of video technology in the amount of $46,800.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. Terry Khatib, Lawrence Police Department. What we have is a grant for $46,800. It's a JAG burn grant, non-matching Douglas County grant for the Douglas County Sheriff's Office and Lawrence Police Department. As you may know or may not know, the burn and JAG grants have been around since 2004. We've generally gotten disbursements every year. Sometimes we have a joint project, sometimes we don't. We don't necessarily have to use the money together. It's money to use for training equipment, technology, can't be used for construction, to enhance community safety and apprehend criminals and come up with innovative technologies. It can't really be used to supplant regularly budgeted money. So this year, we're proposing to use it to enhance downtown safety by adding cameras downtown. You may have already seen one there at 9th and Massachusetts Street. We put that one up during the celebrations. It's not currently hooked to anything. It's just sitting there. So part of this grant would be able to buy a server for it, make some capability to record on that, and also explore other potential areas downtown in the public right-of-way where we could put additional cameras. Now, if you look at a little bit of the history downtown, there's always something going on down there, whether it's a parade, whether it's an event. We've had major crimes occur down there, including shootings and batteries. So being able to have this kind of forensic evidence as far as of a crime would greatly enhance public safety and the ability to solve those crimes. So what I'm asking is you to consider this, and we can move forward on it. I'll take any questions.
How many cameras or how many locations are you anticipating if you receive this grant?
Well, the cameras are probably pretty expensive. They range anywhere between $5,000 to $8,000. So I'm thinking 2 or 3 additional locations and a server and maybe the fiber lines to it. Some of that stuff is going to be determined based upon other projects downtown that maybe to run conduit to that camera. So we're looking at updating the location we have now, maybe another 2 to 3 locations.
Other questions?
Curious, I mean, we're talking about on Mass Street, we seem to have had some issues with the alleys, with tagging and other activities that are going on in the alleys. Is there any, why Mass and not the alleys, or you address that?
Yeah, certainly. I think there's probably a need for additional cameras in more than just Massachusetts Street. I think Massachusetts Street is a good starting point. For example, the shooting we had at the last call, if you recall, in '06, it was actually on New Hampshire Street, and there was a camera behind a private business there that caught some of that. So there is a need, actually, probably on some of those other side streets in the public right-of-way.
Questions? All right, please have a seat. Member of the public wish to comment on this?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Laura Green, and I have some information here I would like to provide to the Commissioners. Can I just give it to City Manager Corliss for you?
Please do.
So what I provided you today is a report that was done by the ACLU. It was done about 2 years ago, and what they did was they went and looked at the proliferation of cameras in cities across California. They came up with some recommendations, and I would just like to go through a couple of those recommendations with you now. The first one that they had really struck me when Manager Corliss was talking about giving notification of spraying on the right-of-ways. We want to tell our public that what we're doing. We want to let them know that we're spraying along our right-of-ways there on the levee. I would think similarly, we would like to let the public know where these cameras are going to be and what they're going to capture. Who are the neighbors there on Massachusetts Street whose businesses are going to be affected by these cameras? I mean, we would like them to know. We'd like to give notice. I find the grant to be a little bit vague. We're going to buy some cameras and we're going to put them on Massachusetts Street. We're not sure where we're going to put them. We're not sure exactly how much we're going to spend per camera. When they say that these burn grants are not matching grants, I find that to be a little bit misleading. If we're going to put a camera up, we're going to have someone watch the film from the camera. That costs taxpayer money. Are these cameras going to be 24 hours a day? Are they going to be 12 hours a day? Are they going to be only used for parades? None of this information is being given to the public. I think the public deserves to know this. I think the businesses need to know this. If we're going to have someone sitting in a terminal in a police station watching a video feed, how much is that going to cost the public? And I do think that that is an included cost. It's a hidden cost. So I'd just like to go through a couple of these recommendations, and I won't keep you very much longer, because I see the clock is ticking. We need to look at other alternatives for these cameras. Is it possible that we could use these cameras on a temporary basis, like we talked about the one at 9th and Mass? We do have big crowds downtown, and public safety is, a concern for everyone in the public. Is it possible that we could use these cameras in a way that would be temporary? maybe that's something that we should explore as an alternative. I don't believe that as a city, we should start down the road of allowing cameras to capture what the ACLU has pointed out is mostly free people in a free society who are doing innocent activities, going about their business. The research by the ACLU has shown that public surveillance cameras do not prevent crime. They simply move it elsewhere, as we've mentioned, into the alleys where there's already criminal activity happening. And are there other effective ways to deal with our present concerns about crime downtown, such as improved lighting or increased police presence? Now, I know these grants are offered every year. I know that the police department have used them for in-car cameras. They've used these for all kinds of hardware. And I think that if we're going to step off that ledge of public privacy, let's really take a look at what we can use these cameras for that would be really effective. The last recommendation that the ACLU have in this report, and I know that you're very busy people, you're probably not going to read this, is that we have a public debate. And I would encourage you to put this on the agenda for the future so that we can actually have a good public discussion. This got moved off the consent agenda very quickly. People didn't have time to prepare tonight to come down to present their views. And I think that, you know, we start off with 2 cameras, 3 cameras, then it's 5 cameras. How much manpower is that going to take? Let's look at the numbers, and let's really talk about what we want people to know about these cameras and where they're going to be pointed and where they're going to be directed. So I'd just like to say to you that, you know, deploying these cameras without a public debate or consideration by the general public may have potential consequences that we haven't even thought about yet. So I would just urge you to bring up more debate about it, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I failed to state prior to the first speaker that at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, I have a little chime that goes like this. And then, isn't that nice? It's nice and soft and gentle. And then we just asked you to kind of finish up quickly, but you did a very good job. You were done before the time allotted. Good evening.
Thank you. My name is Gary Brunk. I'm the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Kansas and Western Missouri. I have to say, I love it when somebody precedes me whom I don't know, citing a ACLU study. I'm here to suggest the need for a broad public dialogue regarding the deployment and use of surveillance cameras before you authorize their purchase. According to an article in the Journal World a couple of days ago, Chief Khatib has said that he would like a video system where footage would be stored for 48 hours. Now, his comments suggest a commendable sensitivity to civil liberties and privacy issues. But I think his comments also underscore that the need for a broad public discussion of the implications of a technology is becoming increasingly familiar feature of American life, and we believe has great potentials for abuse. Today's surveillance cameras incorporate extremely sophisticated technologies that can include zoom capacity, allowing operators to see small objects and features at great distances, and at many times their normal size. So for example, one could be at the other end of Massachusetts Avenue where the camera is, reading a book, and the camera operator would be able to see what the title of the book is. They include facial recognition capacities, enabling a computer to automatically search for a particular person's face. And they include automatic tracking capacity, by which a computer can automatically track a person or a vehicle moving along a public way, jumping from one camera to the next. These capacities can certainly be used to enhance public safety, as in the chief's example in the newspaper of finding a missing child. But they're also susceptible to great abuse. For example, a Detroit Free Press investigation a couple years ago found that a video database available to Michigan law enforcement officials was used to stalk women and track estranged spouses. Camera operators in other communities have been found to focus disproportionately on people of color and to frequently use cameras to voyeuristically spy on women. This is data. A large concern for the ACLU is the potential for video surveillance to have a chilling effect on public's life. When citizens are being watched by authorities, or they're aware that authorities could watch them at any time, they're likely to be more guarded in exercising their First Amendment protected rights. I think it is prudent to ask if we want to live in a city where citizens are being constantly watched by authorities. No one may be proposing to do that in Lawrence today. I don't think anybody is proposing to do that today. But the history in other communities and in other countries is that video surveillance programs inevitably expand. The chief already said in response to a question that there are other places where cameras could be put. 4.2 million surveillance cameras blanket the United Kingdom. 1 camera for every 14 persons. Is that the kind of society that we want to live in? I'm not suggesting that Lawrence is a totalitarian police state. I am suggesting that we need to be always vigilant in the protection of our freedoms, and that this is an instance of that need. I also want to note that there's scant evidence of the oft-repeated rationale that video surveillance of public spaces reduces crime. Most of the research on surveillance cameras has been done in the United Kingdom because they've existed there for years. And in aggregate, those studies have found no statistical significant impact on crime. Likewise, the few US studies show little or no positive impact on crime. A Blue Ribbon Commission that included former FBI Director William Sessions proposed a set of model regulations that contain critical privacy safeguards. And cities including Denver, New York, Pittsburgh, Salt Lake City, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. have adopted explicit written policies on the use of surveillance cameras. Lawrence could do the same, and to that end, the ACLU would be ready to work with the police department to develop a set of those policies. But before we go down that road, we should have a broad public dialogue about the pros and cons of that path, and we should engage a broad cross-section of the public in that dialogue. Thank you for your attention.
Any questions? Thank you.
Good evening, City Commissioners. My name is KT Walsh, and I am very opposed to this idea. I agree with the 2 previous speakers that we need a wide dialogue and deep research before we take this step. I was so glad that he brought up the United Kingdom because there was an amusing quote from the Chief of Police in London when they installed all the CCTVs everywhere, and he said, "We have paid millions to watch mostly incidents of public urination." And, you know, it was hugely costly. What I read also is that there's very little reduction in crime. If we are to be observed in this manner as citizens, I think that the only fair trade-off is for the police department and you commissioners to ask that there be a citizens review board. It seems like if we are to be watched by cameras, we need to be allowed transparency in the police department. I am not favoring hacking. I know it's illegal, but I know that many cameras now are hacked by Anonymous and some other, you know, anarchic organizations, and you spend all this money and they can go in and blank out your cameras. So that's something to look into. And I would just like to close by saying that when the police department is asking for support for their new costly police station, this is a way to alienate the very community that you need to support your expansion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Laura Ruth. I'm not going to repeat what's already been said. I think the points that have been made are valid, and I agree with them. I would like to talk a little bit about the process. And then I have a number of questions that I'm not necessarily expecting you all to be able to answer tonight, but maybe I can meet with Chief Khatib and commissioners that are interested after the fact. In the most recent Journal World article, the police chief was quoted as saying that he expected to hear some concerns from the public about whether the cameras would be an intrusion on people's privacy. And my question is, if you anticipated that there would be commentary about this proposal, why on earth was it put on the consent agenda? I mean, I don't get it. I appreciate you pulling it off the consent agenda, but this is the second time that the police department has come forward requesting unbudgeted money for controversial equipment, and it's kind of gotten slid through the public dialogue on the consent agenda. And if it weren't for the fact that apparently I don't have a life, so I actually read the consent agenda every week, I feel like we would never be able to have these discussions. It doesn't do very much to improve the dialogue between the community and the police department, and frankly, it makes City Hall look a little suspect too. So I would implore you to consider the process here. We need to improve community relations between the police department and the taxpayer, okay? I think that that's pretty well understood. This is not going to help, and the way that this was brought forward really doesn't help. Again, backing up and looking at the bigger picture, there's budget issues here. It's not like we get this $47,000 and that's going to be it. I think we all know that grants create unintended expenses, and they can spiral and create really big unintended expenses where you're trying to justify having spent the first $50,000, so we should go ahead and budget another $200,000. Where does it end? I would like for the public to be able to participate in the discussion about how our tax dollars are being spent by the police department. I think this is a great example of why we need to have a strategic plan in place that has been developed with the coordination of the City Commission, the police chief, and the citizenry. It's not clear to me where this technology fits in the department's priorities or how they would like to use this to improve public safety. There was a comment about how the camera that they already have had really helped with the Final Four, but I didn't really see any discussion as to what that means. I mean, how the chief didn't really explain like how that assistance or help manifested. If this proposal goes through, and I have no illusions that you all are going to necessarily take what's been said tonight and change your course of action, I implore you to do it, but I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. What I would expect is that the city needs to provide regular release of basic information about these cameras. Where are they? How they're being monitored, how much they're costing, what the unintended costs are in terms of manpower and maintenance and repair and so forth. And then any allegations of misuse. I think that that's public information that we have a right to. This is a really slippery slope, folks, and if you feel the need to traverse it, I would just ask that you commit to providing honest and credible information to the public, and I think that the public needs to have an opportunity to comment. So I'd ask you to put this off for tonight and allow us to have a broader public dialogue. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay. Back to the City Commission. Chief, can we have you come up to the podium, please? Is there a time frame for applying for this, or accepting it, or?
Yeah.
I guess we're in the acceptance of it.
I don't know when the actual deadline is. I think it's the end of the month. So part of the acceptance process is it goes in front of a governing body for consent, and then once that's done, we're able to access the grant.
Okay.
Okay, so we would be authorizing staff to request the grant funds, so we haven't even applied for them yet.
Well, we apply for them, and then part of the process is to put it on the governing body agenda and publish it as well.
But
As part of the application process, yeah.
we are sure or aren't sure if we're going to get this money?
Well, the Byrne grant's it's a guaranteed grant, so you're going to get it.
Okay.
If it's not for this project, it's for something else. This particular year, we've asked for the cameras. In prior years, we've used it for forensic equipment, we've used it for in-car video, we've used it for a variety of reasons. So
Okay.
you're going to get the money, whether you get it for this particular project or something else is to be determined.
Okay. Other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Oh, wait, Mike?
Chief, in the, talking about the priorities of the department right now, and specifically to the request for the JAG grant here, Is this the highest priority that we have right now for this particular amount of money?
Well, of course not. We've got lots of other priorities.
This is just the one that fits in?
Yes, fits in with $27,000 or $25,000. Also, we tend to try to use this grant not to hit things that should be part of the normal budget, but to try to push the envelope on innovative technology, unique ways of doing things, increasing public safety, which is things that would not normally be part of a normal budget process.
Commissioners that met with Chief and Police Department representatives this afternoon, they've got substantial equipment needs. In my recommended budget, you're going to see a request to step up their equipment budgeting because we have been able to add quite a bit in the way of equipment, in-car video, and mobile data computers, those types of things. We've been able to do that in some cases with grant money or one-time money. We've not built up the base of their equipment budget. But it's my understanding that with burn grants, you can't request funding for existing replacement of equipment.
That's correct.
So if all things were equal, that's what I would have advocated for, would be to help, because I don't know that we're going to be able to, I know that we're not going to be able to budget within our existing resources. I'm going to ask for additional resources to meet some of their equipment needs. That's probably my highest general fund budget priority. But I do not have the ability to change the federal government's decision that they want new types of equipment or equipment that you don't already have in place to use that. You can't use it for replacement equipment. That's my understanding. If we use it for replacement equipment, that's what I would recommend, but you can't do that.
Chief, can you speak to the costs that come along with this or efficiencies that this would create, that whether it's a net from a cost standpoint? I know it's grant dollars getting the cameras here, but is there a net savings or a net increase as far as monitoring the cameras or efficiency of staff?
I want to make a quick comment. I mean, the public comment about grants costing and having to add more monies later. I mean, those are great comments. We had, and that's part of the problem with a lot of our grant type money, like in-car video. We had a $250,000 grant to do that, and we haven't been able to replace it. So those are all valid concerns. As far as the cameras downtown, it just depends on how much you want to invest in it. As far as crime prevention, those are valid points as well. But I could sit up here and talk a lot about how many crimes we've been able to solve because we had something on video. And that being the greatest public right-of-way, it sure would be nice to be able to catch those kind of things in case an incident happened or a shooting. Or we talk about missing children. There was St. Patrick's Day. We were missing 3 kids for a while. It took us 2 hours to find them, but if we would have had something on video, maybe we could have tried to retrace, okay, where was the child at? Did the child get in a car? Luckily, we found him later. So these are just public safety enhancement tools. The comments are very, very valid. I don't disagree with any of them. But what I'm trying to do is find innovative ways to increase public safety downtown. I'm not envisioning, somebody sitting in a monitoring room, monitoring these. I point out to Dave and tease Dave. He had their person for that. To do that, which I don't have, but putting it on a loop, being able to have that information later on, or even having them but not hooked up, and just a certain set of policies when you can hook them up, I think would be very, very interesting.
Thanks.
One thing I would encourage Tarek to do is to explain what the University of Kansas does in regards to its.
Yeah, KU University of Public Safety, you may have noticed that has probably 20 or 30 of these cameras around town. You can see them at the top of the facilities. They've embraced it as far as student because of safety issues with campus. They actually do have a room where they monitor those things. They have part-time employees, college students that do that. They listen to the radio, and lots of times they work hand in hand with the police officers. If they're dispatched to a certain call, the camera will be able to zoom in on a certain area and let the officer know what's going on, or if something happens, to be able to enhance that public safety, or see if there's a commotion or some kind of disturbance as well. So they use it for campus safety very much.
Is there at KU or at the Lawrence Police Department, is there any policy guidelines on how this information is used? There was some previous speaker indicates that there's some misuse of these kinds of this information.
No.
Do we have written policies in the city that how we use this information, or does KU have anything like that?
I don't know about Kay. I mean, we have general written policies about use of law enforcement systems for personal use. We've got those kind of things, and I don't doubt that there's probably places where people do that. You know, we've got policies against misconduct, and when we find those kind of things, those kind of people are terminated. So any tool, any kind of thing can be used in a perverse way if you allow that to be your culture. And, you know, what I strive to do, and I think what the management of this city and the citizens expect, is not to have that culture and always stay on top of it.
Questions? Thank you, Chief.
Well, I just going to say, I guess I'm desensitized to being watched. I travel every week and going through TSA on a weekly basis. You know what it's like to be screened and to watch. And I didn't realize there'd be this much, concern over it. Although, I will. By the way, I will read this. It's very interesting. I thumbed through it earlier, and I don't think anything I've ever read on these cameras is that they're going to necessarily detract from crime. I think only reason that I thought they would be a good tool was because I thought they would help solving crimes after they've been committed. And frankly, that's about as good as the tool that you're going to find is video documentation of what occurred. I feel like Mass Street is similar in some ways to a shopping mall, as close as one we're going to have in Lawrence. And there isn't a place you can't go in a mall and not be videotaped, whether it's in the stores or in the common areas of the mall. I know this because I've worked in many of them, and I've seen the video control rooms where people watch the, what's going on. It does, concern me. I think people's rights are more important than just about anything, but I think the ability to solve crimes and to, prosecute people who've done bad things in our community is pretty powerful as well. So, for me, this is a weighing, the use of the tool as opposed to whether or not this technology is valuable, because I think it is valuable, but I also see the concerns some people have about their invasion of privacy and the rights of people who, otherwise might feel like they're being invaded. So I understand the concern also about what we're going to do with these cameras, and I think we need to have a plan in place, because I agree, perhaps we stubbed our toe on this one, and I apologize that it wasn't on the regular agenda. I just frankly didn't even see this as being a huge concern, and I now understand a little bit more about, how it impacts people's opinions on safety. So for me, I would be willing to table this and let us have a discussion about it, and about how, maybe a policy, what we would use these cameras for. But I believe that having these cameras to help us solve crimes are very important. I believe that is important. I don't want to add any cost to the process. I don't want to add any more people to the process. I think the chief is just looking for an innovative way to use these tools to help make it a safer community. And I believe all of you here want Lawrence to be safe, and I think we've all seen examples of video surveillance solving crimes. So I think it's a good tool. But I'm not compelled to act one way or another tonight. So I'd be open to talk about that.
Okay, if I could then ask again, the deadline for the application is over and past. Now we're talking about just receiving the money. Is that correct, Dave?
I think it's the end of.
You have to come up to the podium, please.
I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared with that date. I think it's July 1st, but I have to verify that, so that's why it says end of June, so I'll have to take a look at that.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, if we have time, I don't have a problem in talking about, a discussion of policy on how the information that's going to be collected from the cameras is going to be used. I think, public obviously has, a right to know, and we have an obligation to be able to show how this is going to be at least stored, as the chief had said earlier, and how it's going to be used. Commissioner or Vice Mayor, I'm just like you. The public safety part here is extremely important. Every place you go, you're absolutely right. I go to the bank, I'm on camera. I go anywhere, it seems like I'm on camera anymore. And I mean, obviously, that is, private businesses feel like that they have, you know, responsibility not only to, you know, themselves, but to the public that they serve in helping with any type of public safety issues that they may have there. So, you know, we talk about our downtown, and we try to do everything that we possibly can to bring as many people as we can to our downtown. We want our downtown to be successful. We want the businesses that are there and the town square concept to be successful for everybody. We want it to be safe for everybody. Is this the best way? When the chief tells me that, you know, it's one of the you know, the items that they need to be able to carry out the functions that they do for public safety, you know, I believe in what he tells me. How it's going to be used, I believe in what he's going to tell me, and it's going to be used, you know, correctly. But if it is something that, you know, that the commission believes that, you know, a policy that says, you know, the storage, what the storage of the material is going to be and how it's to be used, you know, that's fine. You know, if we can do that by the application deadline, that's fine. We can have that discussion too. But, here again, when you look at our downtown and the investment that the taxpayers has made, you know, in our downtown, I believe it goes without saying our responsibility is to continue to make it safe for everybody to come to is important, and is our responsibility as commissioners to make sure that people are comfortable and are safe when they come to downtown. So I would be somebody that would you know, support, you know, the application, the purchase of the cameras, you know, and have the discussion of what that policy is going to look like. So.
Okay. Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I think I echo both those. I would probably, I just think I differ on holding off to create the policy, only because, well, a couple reasons. I guess I'll go through that. I do understand the concerns that people have about potential misuse, and while I have, like Commissioner Amix and Endeavor, you know, faith that that won't be the case here. I understand that reality is it happens in big cities, small cities, and everywhere. So that's a realistic concern that those abuses could happen. I know I do understand there are some that feel alienated. I do think the majority actually appreciate and recognize this, but again, I respect those who feel like this is an intrusion. And those who've expressed appreciation for this and do include, we got a letter from Downtown Lawrence Inc., I believe, supporting this. Somebody had mentioned the businesses should know we at least have that support that's been offered for this as well. When we talk about not preventing crime with this, I don't think it's not ever going to prevent crime, because I do think that the cameras, based on limited resources within the police department, can identify someone watching them, can direct maybe fewer staff to be in the right place or where the most action is versus staff simply patrolling potentially. But I know ideally it's there to solve crimes. But one of the things that's a little unique to downtown is there may be some nuisance issues that this could help with as well. I think we have nuisance issues downtown that are as big a concern as anything to the to businesses, and there are you know, people who spend great deals a great amount of time downtown that I would call kind of serial offenders of nuisance violations. So I think, you know, there potentially could be some prevention of this simply by addressing repeat offenders. You know, that person who's going to have one incident downtown, violent or not, you know, it's not going to stop that because we have it on film. It might help us prosecute it. But I do think it could help us with some of the chronic offenders downtown of maybe some less serious and nonviolent things, but that at the same time do impact the ambiance downtown. Just my thought. But what I say, I feel like we go ahead and we need to monitor the costs associated with this, monitor the effectiveness, but looking at just a few cameras downtown, I think I'm okay with, you know, deploying this anyway, and still directing Chief Khatib to go ahead and come up with that policy for us, not hold up the purchase, but I agree we should have some policies around this. Any sort of significant expansion of this program, you know, again, one, I think we need to have a wider conversation at that point, but also a good review of how it's been utilized so far, how effective it is. And so at this point, I think I'd be in support of going ahead and accepting the grant anyway, getting this moving forward and directing Chief to go ahead and draft some policies around this.
I tend to agree with a lot of those sentiments. I think downtown is pretty well video wired now. I don't know that there's most of the shop fronts that you go into are currently, you can there's a pretty good chance that you're on video in a lot of them. A lot of the retailers use it to help prosecute, shoplifting, that sort of thing. As far as prevention of crime, no, I seriously doubt it. But solving crime, yeah, I can totally see how the use of cameras can help solve crime. Solving crime easier frees up police resources. We have very limited police resources, so the easier we solve crimes, the more resources we have to help solve other crimes. And so I think that can be a net positive. Yeah, I think that it is important that we come up with some guidelines for the comfort of our citizens, that that their trust isn't being violated, that we don't have some of the sort of a little more aggressive sort of scenarios with the cameras, that those sorts of scenarios aren't being played out here in Lawrence. So yeah, I think that we could use that, and I'd be either, but honestly, I'm either willing to go forward with the acceptance of the grant under the condition that, yeah, we're going to take a look at this, and when we get to implementation of this, that we're going to have some look at how that's the rules and procedures that our police are going to follow. I'd be willing to go forward with it now, with the caveat that come back before us at that time. I think that'd be a fine way of dealing with it. But if we want to table the whole thing and tackle it all together, that's fine too. So.
Okay. Well, from my perspective, I've been the victim of a lot of crime over the years. I think anything we can do to catch the perpetrators, and if it has any result in keeping crime from happening, then that's an extra plus. Massachusetts Street is quite a street. It attracts different crowds at different times of the day, and if we allow that to become unsafe, or the concern that it isn't safe, then I think we do grave damage to our community. It's something we're very proud of. I feel like I want to move ahead with the grant tonight. I'm also willing to look at our policy to make sure that it's what we expect it to be, and I think we can do that. I want to note also that on any Tuesday night, any city commission can take those cameras down. It's just not forever and always. If there's a problem with them, then things change quickly if it is. So I'm not too concerned about that. I am more concerned about the safety and welfare of the citizens in downtown Lawrence, and certainly that would be my foremost thought. That, I think, is the gist of the letter from the Downtown Lawrence Inc. as well. So I'd be happy to move ahead with the grant tonight, with the understanding that we should look at the policy before they're implemented, as Commissioner Cromwell stated. So that'd be my thought on it.
So we're going to apply for a grant. We don't know where we're going to put them. We're not sure how we're going to transmit the data. We're not sure what we're going to do with the data, but we're going to ask for $46,800. And we're going to tell them it's for this, but we don't know if there's something else we could use $46,800 for. I mean, that's kind of the question that came up for me.
That's not what I meant in my comments.
I mean,
right, I understand. My thought is that there's going to be 2 or 3 cameras, or maybe more, additional to what we have. They're going to be hooked up, and they're going to receive information that's going to be stored. And if there's a problem, I'm sure the tapes are going to get looked at like they do in every other kind of criminal situation, and help to solve problems with it. In that recording of the information it is imperative that we have a policy that protects the public against unwarranted use. And so I think that's where I would want to have the discussion and see what we have that we can reassure the public that they're going to be used properly. I'm going to let the police department decide where they put them. I don't care if we can notify the public where they're at. I don't think that's
Yeah.
any kind of issue for me
Smile,
at all.
you're on camera.
Yeah, I suppose. But that's my take on it. Mike?
Dave, let me ask this. If the policy is put together and we as a commission don't like the policy, do you have to go ahead and move ahead and accept the final monies on the grant?
No.
Or can it go to some other project?
We can either try and reapply, or we can send the money back. What I hear the commission saying is we want an appropriate policy. We'll look at the information from third parties. We'll look at what other peer communities are doing. We'll let you all look at it, so the full public can look at it as well, the people who've spoke and others that are interested in that. I think the chief's kind of outlined some of the parameters of that policy as far as it can't be used for anything inappropriate, and we have some mechanism for checking that. And you all can see that policy and adopt that policy, and that policy probably will include something about some type of review of how we've used it to some extent. And that's probably going to be contemporary. These things usually take some time as far as going through the process of speccing and bidding and all that kind of stuff. So we could make sure that before we install it, we have an adopted policy.
Yeah, because it was like when we got tasers. I mean, but there, there's people who were comfortable with us getting them.
Right.
We had a plan on how we're going to do it. We had a training regimen we were going to have in place. We, vetted all of that process for us before we did that. And I just feel like this is another tool, which I am in favor of, but I would like the public and myself to be comfortable that we have a plan in place before we get them. That's all. And I think because of the concerns were raised tonight, but more importantly, because I've seen them, I have seen this become an issue that backfires, not necessarily just safety, but people perceive it in a different way. And so I would just like that we, as we vote on this, approve a plan and the tools, the tools and a plan that coincides with those tools. So that's what I would like to have in place. But
Well, I think, Vice Mayor, I think what we can guarantee you is that we won't install them until you've approved the policy.
Okay, so maybe I'm not understanding. Are we getting that money tonight?
What you're doing is you're authorizing Tarek and his staff to get online with the Department of Justice and point out that, yes, this has been approved by I think it's been approved by the county, and it's also it's already been approved by the county, it's going to be approved by the city commission, and then we'll have to go through their procedures, which are not, they're not going to then just wire us the money tomorrow. Even if they did, we wouldn't use it yet until we've installed, till we have had a policy in place by you all, and you've installed that policy, you've approved that policy. I don't know exactly, Commissioner, when we would actually get the funds in place. Usually they do it on a reimbursement basis. You show them the equipment that you've bought, and it's because it meets their certain specs, and you show them the program, and then you fill out the forms, and you sign it to them, and then you get the money afterwards. So we wouldn't probably get the money until sometime later. That's the usual process on these grants.
So then the next decision that would be made on this is
You would review a draft policy.
review a draft policy, but that is before we make the purchase of the cameras. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Then that's fair.
fair enough.
Everybody okay?
We're going to see the policy, then buy the cameras, and then, okay, got it.
Just giving us direction on that.
Going to accept the grant, write the policy, buy the cameras. We don't approve the policy, find something else to spend the money on, or send it back.
Correct. And then we'll do the policy here.
Correct.
Right here.
At this-
Okay, perfect.
Right here at this table.
Okay.
All right, everybody okay? Anybody else? Entertain a motion at this time reflecting that sentiment.
So moved.
Second.
Dever, Amix, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda then is to receive staff and consultant briefing on infrastructure planning for the former farmland property.
Mayor and Commissioners, we've got a number of people in this room that have brought us to this date in regards to our redevelopment plans on the former farmland property, and we'll introduce them as appropriate, but I certainly want to acknowledge all of their work. It's really been a team effort to look at this. It's probably involved almost every department in the city, from IT and Jim Wisdom talking about the importance of getting certain fiber to this location, to the utility department, obviously Chuck Souls and Matt Bond, and Public Works Department, Diane and Britt in our office, Tony in the city attorney's office. Been a lot of people that have been working on this. Scott McCullough in our planning and development services. So if I start the list, I'll probably step over some people, and then obviously Darren will introduce his team as well. What we want to do this evening is provide you with an update on where we are in regards to the infrastructure planning on the former farmland property. This is not the comprehensive receipt of the deliverables from the consultant. They still have work to do. We still have a lot of work to do in order to finalize the work on the green energy and green infrastructure opportunities that we have on the site. We're going to give you an update from that. Eileen Horn, our sustainability coordinator, not our retiree attraction coordinator, our sustainability coordinator.
Maybe she could do both.
Is going to provide an update on that, but I want to emphasize we're not finished on that work. But as you saw in my memo, and as you'll get briefed here by Darren, we have been involved in trying to involve as many stakeholders as possible. This is before really the public process of platting and rezoning, which will provide even additional opportunities for public participation in regards to the street infrastructure and the uses on that property. So we want to start off, and Darren, if you want to go ahead and bring up your slide. Counseled Darren earlier that we want to try and move through some of this. You all are somewhat familiar with the property. You've spent a little bit of time on these issues, but for those in the community that may or may not be familiar with it, we want to provide that briefing. Greg is here from the chamber as well, and is I think quickly coming up to speed on the importance of this property for growing jobs and tax base in the community, and we're excited to have him as a partner and for him to provide his experience and wisdom about how we can get prospective tenants on the property. So we think it's coming. Okay, good. So with that as just kind of a prologue, and you see the memo, I'm going to turn it over to Darren to provide a little bit of an update on where we're at. What we'd like to be able to do is take some of the additional steps in the planning process. Darren's going to talk a little bit about time frame, and Scott can chime in as well, so that we can go ahead and move forward for hopefully turning dirt later this year on some of the infrastructure installation. Darren.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commissioners. Is it okay if I stand up there and speak?
Certainly.
All right, thank you.
Try to state your name, please, for the record and for the press.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I'm Darren Ammon with Bartlett & West. I'm the project director for the farmland master planning process we've been going through. Although I've been the lead point of contact from our Bartlett & West and CDM Smith team, as Dave mentioned, it's certainly not been about me just leading this effort without lots of folks involved. Also here with me tonight from Bartlett & West and CDM Smith is Joe Caldwell, Mike Beeshold, and Stacy Lamer, and each of those folks are going to have a chance to talk a little bit and tell you about some of the areas that they've been studying. Again, this is a large project, something I'm really passionate about and been very excited about since I've heard the City of Lawrence has moved forward with acquiring this property. Focus a little bit on the PowerPoint here for the next few minutes. This is the list briefly. Again, I'll cover some of these things of the tasks that Bartlett & West and CDM Smith has been assigned to, doing the master plan, looking at lot layout and configuration. understanding really what's on and around the site, how that's going to impact the potential layout, the engineering of a main intersection, also looking at doing some preliminary platting, understanding how we can make this potentially creative, flexible, and unique, what some of those green and sustainable values can be, and then understanding how rail and soil borings would impact a potential design of a master plan for this layout. Here's a brief overview, snapshot of really the last 5 months and then going forward. Obviously, we're here for a City Commission presentation tonight. We've done a lot of different studies. One of the things that I don't want to overlook for sure, which is shown on this second slide here, is really the amount of meetings and participation that we have had with the surrounding property owners, the key stakeholders, people that we really want to hear what their opinions and thoughts are of this. We did have a key stakeholders meeting early in the process to get some feedback about what is a new business park in Lawrence, Kansas look like to you? What are some of those things that would make it a place to want to be here in Lawrence, Kansas? So this is not just about figuring out how fast we can grade roads and can we get sewers, but understanding all of those elements as well. I'm going to speak a little bit, probably the next 5 or 10 minutes, to cover some of the specifics that we have looked at, just to give you a little bit of background, not covering every detail of the past 5 months of investigation, but some of those specifics that are very important. The property that you hear most specifically about outlined in red is really the main focus area of this business park. If you included the triangle north of the tracks, which is this location here, the entire red area, and the county property that's included within some of the East Hills Business Park, you'd have about 527 acres total. The area to the north up here, and I lost my pointer, so there we go. That's about, that's in the floodplain completely north of the tracks, is 32 acres. The larger parcel itself that we really do a lot of the planning on is 435 acres, and then the county owns 61 acres of property. And again, when we approach this process, it's really about understanding the outside in and the inside out, because there's a lot of parameters. Obviously, farmland's been in this community for a long time. You have a lot of neighbors. You have a lot of adjacent infrastructure. You have a lot of potential access points. On the site itself, there's a significant amount of challenges. And I could speak for about 2 hours on all of the different things we've really looked at in great detail, but that's everything from how access will be encouraged on the site. What can we keep for some of the trees? How do the environmental items impact the property? Where are the soil borings going to be placed to understand how much rock we have on the property? Where are the utilities? And a lot of different things. So some of the traditional things, infrastructure and access was encountered, but also some more unique things. More specifically, there's a AT&T singular wireless cell tower on the property that sits pretty much in the middle of our planning area. How are we going to plan around that to get a usable lot on the property? Also looking at things like there's a significant amount of stormwater drainage that runs through the property from the south heading north. How can we not only use that to manage stormwater on the property with a new development, but also look at it as an amenity? Maybe turn that into a recreational path and have folks want to enjoy that as an amenity of the park and not just move stormwater from one place to another. One thing you hear a lot about in the development world as well is rail access. This property already has rail on it. It has rail adjacent to it by BNSF. How can that impact and provide an opportunity for potential tenants on the property, but also understanding that a lot of that rail, which we know now after studying it for a while, was in poor condition, needed to be upgraded or revamped, and looking at those items as well. The next two graphics here, I'll explain a little bit about what this is. This is a conceptual study early on of looking at the entire property. This actually is half of it. Here's where the greenway was on the last slide. This is a proposed main entrance. If I can get that there, right there for O'Connell and K-10. What this shows is when looking at the grading of the property, if there's a bunch of pad sites of varying size on the property, what's it going to take to move earth? Because we know moving earth on a development is a substantial cost. This graphic illustrates placing pad sites within the layout that we have thought about, with red being cut section, blue being a fill section, and yellow being a neutral section. It gets an understanding of at least what type of earth and quantities we're talking about moving. Then we did the same thing on the eastern half as well, really starting to understand, so once we do put in roads, infrastructure, and get a lot layout on there, how much earth is it really going to take on a piece of property like this to move something in order to make it viable? This is a little bit different if we were building in the middle of a farm field, for example, where everything is primarily flat, we're not moving substantial amounts of earth and it's already pad ready. There's a lot of grade challenge on this site to get things that could be buildable for future tenants. One of the main challenges we did encounter to start with, and this is O'Connell looking north toward the Farmland Industries plant across K10, is the existing Westar substation that sits there. It's not only extremely attractive, as you can tell, it poses the challenges for connecting future roads and how are we going to have infrastructure get around that. I'll talk a little bit more about that briefly. Not only did we have the substation sitting directly north of where O'Connell would go straight north, Southern Star has a 26-inch high-pressure gas line that runs basically adjacent to that on the western side, and they have a lot of parameter requirements as well to look to avoid and understand how we could develop with them as well. Flip through the next few slides here. These were concepts that had been vetted out amongst the team early on in the process. We didn't come to the recommended concept you're going to see here in a moment easily. We looked at a lot of different things. How can access points be tied into? Again, how does it affect the grades? How far is it going to take to run sanitary sewer to different lots? So looking at some of these layouts were explored in depth with the planning team to really understand what it's going to take to come up with a potential solution that really seems viable going forward. This graphic here, and apologize from the projector, it's a little bit fuzzy, is the recommended concept that our team has come up with at this point after extensive study. And give you a little bit of information about what we're looking at here, and then I'll walk you more specifically through it on a large scale from west to east, is including the existing East Hills Business Park, there would be 17 lots of about 256 acres. If we excluded some of those lots that would be reconfigured slightly on the eastern portion over here, you would have 228 new available acres on 13 lots. And keep in mind, that's the way we have talked about in terms of having lots developed immediately for platting, but some of those could be combined. The largest lot would be 75.8 acres, with the smallest being 3.3 acres, which gives you about a 15-acre average. So as I move forward here a little bit, and there's a lot going on this slide, so I apologize. What I may do is use the mouse to explain some of this. Again, to get your bearings, right here is this is K10 and O'Connell to the south. This, after a lot of study and understanding, we did have a full traffic study, would be the proposed new main intersection for a future business park. That intersection currently is under design to be fully signalized, to have a full traffic signal. Joe's going to talk a little bit more about some of the road infrastructure here in a second. But having the main entrance here with a north-south road that would head up and connect to 19th Street potentially in the future, understanding at this time that the first phase of road would be probably significantly shorter than that and would not connect to 19th until at the time 19th Street would be improved. As we get over to the west side of the property, I apologize, the mouse wants to disappear. This is what's East 1575 Road that right now leads up to, as you kind of call it, the back road to the fairgrounds. Actually, the city owns all the way over to the far western side of this property, which is adjacent to some of the mobile home parks. The county currently has a 75-foot access easement that runs up there, so they have access still to the fairgrounds, but that would provide an opportunity to potentially plat some new right-of-way if that's the direction we've decided to go. Talking a little bit more specifically about some of the challenges with Westar, what this graphic has on it, and it's a little bit hard to tell from some of the colors. The green represents the easement that Southern Star Gas would have, and they typically have a 66-foot easement in terms of keeping their 26-inch high-pressure gas line separate from other entities. And Westar currently is located right in this location again. There's one substation here, and there's another substation here. What the city and Chuck Souls is talking with them primarily right now is having a land exchange to build a brand new modern substation in the larger square here to the north. That would be 350 by 400 approximately. And there would be an easement for Westar that would move. They currently have some various easements in this area by their current substation, and then a blanket easement in this section over here. They would have specific easements that would have new power poles running from the south that would cross K10, come up to the north, go into the new substation, and then come out of the north and then go north all the way up past 15th Street and further and beyond. The lot configuration that we've got going on here, and one thing talking about being flexible, is you can see there's 4 primary lots designated right here of varying size, 11, 8, 3, and 6. But one opportunity may be is if a tenant is really interested potentially in this location, they could be one large lot of about 30 acres. So the road initially may be only built with a temporary cul-de-sac to a location as such, but then providing a tenant a much larger lot to locate if they desire to. So it really provides a lot of opportunity going forward. The other thing is really creating a good access for the existing businesses along K10 and 23rd Street. We met with those folks specifically, as well as owners further to the north of the towing yard and the salvage area. Met with them specifically to understand what some of their concerns were. Along 23rd Street, it was access, and how would this new development impact my access? And it's hard to tell, again, on this particular drawing, but the proposal is to continue the frontage roads that currently ties into an exit here at O'Connell, but turn that north to have this more of a back road, we would call it access, that would get folks then out to a new signalized intersection here at 23rd and O'Connell to provide them access to this location right in here. One of the other things is there is a large green space in here, and that was intentional to provide us an opportunity at the front to have a really good main entrance and have an attractive entrance coming in with a sign, maybe some ideas for some green initiatives. Eileen's going to talk a little bit more about what some of those ideas are, but also have some green space. So the first thing we're not seeing is a lot of power boxes and telephone poles and so forth, but also having some green space with some landscaping that could hide the substation that's shown here further back, and really providing an opportunity to say, welcome to a new business park. Kind of summarizing some of the layout items here before Joe talks a little bit about some of the roads. This is the remainder, 2/3 of the property, shown in this location on the left. Right in here, here's the large 75 acre lot. And one of the questions that came up a lot when we started looking at this is, and we hear a lot about current business parks, is they want the 100 and they want the 150 acre lot so they can bring in substantial businesses. The one that comes to mind is Mars over in Topeka. We looked at a lot of different configurations on this, got a lot of feedback from folks at KU, the chamber, commissioners, different folks like yourself, to really understand what can we do, what's going to work for this area, because not all solutions are a one-size-fits-all. And really it kind of came down to that it felt like between 20 and 50 acres would be preferred, but we'd like to at least have one large lot to offer. Because of some of the substantial grade challenges in this particular location, as you drive by, you know there's a lot of hills over in this location. There is rock near the tower location at 4 feet. So unless there's going to be a substantial amount of money to develop for blasting rock, trying to flatten things out, it really didn't become feasible to try to get 150 acre lots on this property. So 75 acres located in here was the largest lot. And again, this can be divided up for multiple tenants or possibly one large tenant. That in this location, this is the one lot right now where the railroad currently comes in this location and could serve a rail user, for instance. We've got, again, larger lots here at the front that could be combined into a bigger lot. The same portion over here. And really, these areas right in here, currently right now, from a development standpoint, as I would look at it, they look somewhat more pad ready because they're a little bit more level and could be graded a little bit more easily. As we get over to this location, they become a little bit more challenged because there's a lot of topography, a lot of topographic concerns. This is the location again right here of the tower, and you can see two greenways running north and south. And this location right here is actually of a potential future right-in, right-out that may be necessary to accommodate additional traffic when the park becomes successful. I'm going to turn it over to Joe to speak 2 or 3 minutes just to give you an overview of some of the road parameters and what we're looking at, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, sir. A lot of this stuff Darren already touched on, so I'm going to hit some of the new highlights. I think the, oh, well, let me see if I can operate this thing. This area down here is the O'Connell intersection. That's going to be the main entrance into the park. There'll be 2 lanes in, left turn lane as you're coming southbound, left turn onto K10 to the east, a through lane, a right turn only lane. It'll also have that landscape median that Darren commented on. The rest of the streets, or all the streets, I guess, in the business park are proposed to have what we call the complete streets concept. So they will include bike lanes, hopefully at some point in the future here, connecting to 19th Street. That connection to 19th Street won't occur until 19th Street is improved east of Harper. So phase 1 of the street construction anyway is going to kind of end here at the north side of that intersection of O'Connell and the east-west roadway. And then phase 2 will be when we make the connection further to the north to 19th once it's improved. As Darren mentioned, there's going to be a right turn, or right in, right out only here on K10, just to give a different access in and out of the business park. And then also that's important is the access point there at Greenway Circle so that we can tie the existing East Hills Business Park to the new business park. Darren spent a fair amount of time talking about the roadway here, and I think the only thing I want to point out again is the north-south frontage road, if you will, the connection to the existing frontage road that's on the north side of K10. We had some discussion about just creating a cul-de-sac and cutting that thing off adjacent to K10, and in talking to some of the businesses, everybody decided it was a good idea to provide access to where the signal is going to be for ease of entrance into that area. The other thing that's shown on here in a real light red, that's kind of the area where the existing Westar substation is. One of the challenges up front, as Darren alluded to, was trying to get around that substation with appropriate, and I'm going to sound like a real engineer here, appropriate road geometrics so that our curves were correct, and we were providing the right amount of safety from a horizontal sight distance standpoint. So that really became the challenge, and between Darren and Chuck and the city staff, as well as the Westar staff, they really worked well together to create this new location for the Westar property, which is also going to help facilitate a better entrance into the park, a more pleasing entrance into the park.
So Joe, what's the plan then? Are they going to build it?
Yeah, let's
Move it?
yeah, that process is going to be about 18 to 24 months, and I think they're probably going to start the clock on that after negotiations are kind of completed, and working hard to try to get that done now. Go ahead.
Vice Mayor, we're in extensive discussions with Westar right now on what we want to be able to do is recommend to you a land exchange agreement where we're going to get their existing easement. We're going to then give them some of the property where you see where they're going to relocate the substation. And then they're also going to get certain easements and give up other easements. And we want to get that started sooner rather than later. So we'd like to get that. We'd like to get them underway with the planning for that. They've got to get a special use permit. We've already had them talking with Scott about how to get that in place. So we're trying to get that kind of jump-started sooner rather than later. So it is going to take some time for them to do that. And we probably may have a temporary entrance into the park until we can get the final entrance that you see there right now.
Yeah, one of the things, as Dave was talking about there, is the red box is the Westar. You can see that our edge of right-of-way for the new roadway kind of still cuts through the corner of that. So what we're anticipating doing is having a temporary road offset to the east a little bit.
Is that the one that's on the plan there?
No, that would be the final alignment that's shown there now. We would have to offset a little bit further east to this side.
Sorry, with the road to the west?
That's the connection to the frontage road. So two separate entities there. Those would be, one of the discussions we've been having is separating those so that it doesn't look like parallel roadways, and between all the landscaping that we'll see on the next slide here, there's the green median that's shown here, but then again, landscaping in this area, berm, so that you can create the entrance into the park. And then finally, just a quick, and this is a little bit challenging to see as well, but this is O'Connell again, K10. You kind of see the box here. These are crosswalks that are anticipated to be put in with the signalization so that pedestrians can cross at the location. And then the long linear here is a left turn lane that's going to be added for access into the park. So with that, I will turn it over to Eileen to talk about sustainability.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm going to buzz through this memo that you have in front of you, and then I'll take any questions. So it's difficult to see on the slide, so hopefully you received this in your packet. But I wanted to give you an update today on where we stand with some of the projects that are in the research and design phase and we're actively pursuing, and then also introduce you to some ideas that we're also considering as part of this process. This is a really exciting project because I think it provides that opportunity for the environmental cleanup matching with building the local economy, and so I think this is becoming a really great sustainability showcase, and I commend you all for making sure that we include those in the master planning process. So the way the memo is laid out is that I have the first kind of section is projects currently in research and design stage. So within those projects, we have 4 different tracks that we're looking at for renewable energy. The first is on-site solar photovoltaics for electricity production. There are a couple different scales that we're looking at this at, either to power, for example, lighting or pumps that we have that are city operated on-site, and then we're also exploring the potential of a much larger solar array, and that would be much more complicated and require a purchase power agreement with Westar, but it's something that our CDM Smith team has been looking at. The second renewable energy option is something that when the Bartlett and West and CDM Smith teams looked around the radius of the farmland plant and realized that we have the resource of the wastewater treatment plant nearby, they started looking at what kind of resources could we have for biogas production there. So capturing the methane from our current biosolids process, or amping that up actually by adding additional organic matter, capturing that biogas, and then using that to generate electricity. So that's another research track that we're looking at. At first we had kind of discussed sending that to farmland, but the electricity needs are so great at the wastewater treatment plant that we would likely use it all on site, but that's an additional piece there. The next one, I think we have that slide as well, is a research pilot project that would be an expansion of what we have going on at the wastewater treatment plant now. So Dr. Belinda Sturm at KU, who's part of the Feedstock to Tailpipe Initiative, has a small pilot project where she's using the wastewater treatment plant water to grow algae and to turn that into biofuels. So we have some opportunity because we have a lot of nitrogen in the water on site, and so that's a great feedstock potentially for growing some algae. So we're talking to her about potentially scaling up that research project. And then the fourth piece, the biomass plant pictured there, is a result of the technical assistance that we're receiving from EPA and the National Renewable Energy Labs. That team is assessing the potential for a biomass plant, which would take wood waste or crop residues, pelletize those, and then burn them for electricity generation. One note on both the biomass and the solar is what we run into is that in the state of Kansas, it is illegal for an entity to act as a utility within another utility's service territory. So the city can't build a solar array or a biomass plant and then sell that to business park tenants or give it. So if we pursue a large renewable energy option, we would have to enter a purchase power agreement with Westar and sell them the electricity, and then they would sell it to the customers. So it creates some complications there, but I think we do still have some good viable options.
There's no way we can get around that? Sue them? Get a special dispensation from the governor?
I really wish that I have met with them preliminarily, but
Sorry,
I don't.
hold on.
Sorry.
Got something caught in my throat there.
Maybe we can put this in District 1 somehow and make them, I don't know, something.
I think there's some creative
Okay.
options to explore. So that's the renewable energy overview. I would say that we have a lot of great folks working on this with CDM Smith and NREL and EPA. So right now we just have preliminary concepts, but we'll have a lot more information on the feasibility and the cost analysis very soon. The second piece that we are definitely moving forward on is the complete streets design elements. So as you can see, we're working on the bike lanes and the recreational path. Please pay no attention to the people that are clearly disobeying the signage by riding their bike on the walking lane. We won't have any of that in our business park, I assure you. The third piece that we're definitely moving forward on is the stormwater management best practices. So we're that greenway that currently deals with the stormwater, we're going to be looking at some ecological stormwater best management practices like bioretention, like rain gardens and such, to be sure that we can slow down the water and also improve the quality as it moves through the site. So the additional pieces that are outlined in your memo are things that we think would help business tenants. So if a business tenant wants to locate in the park and has some LEED building aspirations or green building aspirations, we went through and looked at what are some things that we could do in prepping the site to help get them some LEED points as a selling point for these locations. So some things we've talked about is the commuter lot, having electric vehicle charging stations or bike lockers to encourage low emission transportation or alternative transportation. The way we design the sites in terms of leaving habitat for wildlife and using low water usage landscaping can also help get them some points. And we're also looking at some nice kind of showcase pieces in terms of solar photovoltaic street lighting, so LED lights that would actually have a solar panel on that east-west road, and then potentially small scale wind turbines to power small uses on the site. So we're trying to figure out ways that would be completely voluntary for the businesses, but would help, brand this as a green business park, and then potentially help some businesses who do have green building plans to achieve those objectives. So, any questions?
A question. Eileen, whoever this might be too, but you mentioned the nitrogen content there. Can we just touch on where we are as far as the contamination and
Sure.
that sort of thing? I'm guessing certain portions of it are further along, and
Yeah.
Right now, what we do with the nitrogen water that we collect from all the sumps and the trenches is we either put it in the above-ground storage tank number 6 or number 5, or we put it in the overflow pond, which has got a 16 million gallon capacity. Right now, it's kind of a good news, bad news. The good news is the concentrations of the nitrogen are going down. The bad news is the concentrations of the nitrogen are going down, because what that means is the farmers that we send the water to north of the river, they have to put more water on their property to get the pounds per acre that they want. We're just about ready to start to construct a couple of interceptor trenches, which we think will boost that concentration. The flip side of that is we will start collecting less water. So with those two things, we think that will help the volume. We have a finite capacity between the 2 tanks and the overflow pond. So in the long run, I think that will help things out. So we're still looking at probably 20 years of remediation of pumping, 20 to 30, just based on that. I'll know more once we get the interceptor trenches in and we start collecting some data on where those concentrations fall and how those go up or down, depending upon what we collect out of the hill.
as far as
As you say, you want to make it clear where that's towards all towards the northern portion.
That's all, yeah, yeah.
So as far as moving dirt, though, there's a good portion of it that moves forward.
The groundwater is coming out of the sandstone hill, and the ponds in the northeast corner of the site will be unaffected by what we're doing as development. The only environmental concern we would have would be the high or the low pH that we have off of the Ricker facility, which is right around the old chrome reduction system, and that's a finite spot that we can show you here in a little bit.
Okay.
But for the most part, that's just monitoring that.
Thank you.
Okay, then, can I ask, have you guys explored somehow increasing the nitrogen level by evaporation? In other words, either active or passive evaporation of the water, monitoring the concentration, maybe even in that pond, and then, or actively using solar heat, maybe generating, running off some of the water to increase the concentration
Right,
of
and some of that's
nitrogen.
been, well, with Dr. Sturms, with the algae growth.
Yeah.
And using that, since I think the small scale, I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Eileen, I think it was 2,500 gallons is what she's using at the water treatment plant. We have 16 million gallons plus another 5 and 2.5 in
Yeah,
the 2 tanks.
that's a lot.
So we have plenty of capacity as far as exploring that. Like I said, when we get those interceptor trenches in and I start to curve off the amount of water that we're actually pulling in, I expect those concentrations to go up, but the actual volume to go down, because we're collecting it straight from the hill. Because when Co-op was running, when the Farmland Industries plant was running, they had their ponds on top of the sandstone hill for their evaporation ponds. Now, inherently, that's a good thing for evaporation. Inherently, it's also bad because it's a sandstone hill, which is why we're getting the groundwater contamination that we did. So once we pick those things up, I think we're going to have a lot less water to deal with.
And then you mentioned Sandstone Hill. Can you point on the drawing where that is for all the commissioners so they know which areas where the interceptor trench is going to go and what's hot still? I think that's important for everybody to understand.
Sandstone Hill is this area right up here, okay, and that where if I probably had another 2 cans of Dr. Pepper, maybe I'd stop speaking. That's number 6 tank. Number 5 tank is right here. The interceptor trench will come basically in an east-west route across there, and then I've got another one that goes north-south. So the idea is any of the groundwater that's coming out of that hill will hit that interceptor line, and then we're going to put that right back into either number 5 or number 6 tank, or we have a system of pipes that we can get it over here to the overflow pond. So that whole northern edge is where our main remediation is, and then what I alluded to earlier was the RCRA site. We have 13 monitoring wells right here, and the plume for that is fairly small. That's one of the things we're going to have to talk to KDHE about, is, you know, ongoing with that. As fate would have it, I just got a 33-point bulletin back from KDHE early this afternoon on what they want me to do for the remedial design, remedial action plan. So for the most part, and I just read through most of it, they're fairly minor points. There's a couple things I'll probably have to go through, but that's an ongoing process we have.
And then lastly, can you highlight, make sure everyone understands the triangle of unusable land there?
As far as access for master planning?
Just for now. Let's just say for the next 20 years.
Well, the triangle's fine.
No, I'm sorry. The
this?
trapezoidal thingy there. Okay, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, this will never be zoned for any residential. That's completely off by the environmental use control. But as far as the western ponds, we're going to reconfigure into regional detention for the farmland property itself. So these will be sized for the majority of any stormwater runoff will go to that pond and then out to the Kansas River. This piece over here on the western half will go to this little detention pond we have up here. But as far as this is a landfill that they've used, the East Line Pond was capped with all of the environmental excavations they had to put in that pond. So with the exception of regional detention, continued remediation with our land application program for the overflow pond, and then what we dredge out of here to make regional detention, we'll put in one of these ponds over here. And then any other excavations we have on site, we have a soil waste management plan. Those soils are put in this. So with the exception of regional detention here, and then where we put our soils from any excavations we have, that's about the only thing that's going to be used for. Now, what we can use for, once we cap the farthest east pond that is currently open, we could put a solar array on that. So,
good. Okay. And then the hill you can't, they say future on the map. It's kind of unclear to people what that means.
well, and it really depends on how fast we get that cleaned up as far as the groundwater coming out of it.
I had a lot of people asking me about it, so it's really not anything in the near future, though.
No.
This is future.
So that's the hottest area.
Yeah, the hottest area is, and it's just over fertilizer.
Okay.
And it's not, it's excess nitrogen is what we've got.
Is that, when Darren was showing the lots themselves broken up, is that where the 75-acre lot falls?
That line right there is the northern boundary of that 75-acre lot. So what we're talking about is the quote-unquote hot area is north of that 75 acres.
Okay. You haven't even shown us that as far as your development plan goes. Thank you. That's what I was trying to figure how much what we saw was not actually able to happen yet. I get it now. Thank you. Yeah.
Darren's going to finish up.
Well, to finish up on that, I'm real excited, hearing about some of the opportunities that we can do with some of the green initiatives. But looking forward, I put this slide up here. This is kind of when the process started, what really we think about setting the standard around this area of what do you think about in terms of a creative and unique business park. Cons of Fire, Bartlett and West was fortunate enough to help Go Topeka develop the Cons of Fire Commerce Park in Topeka. And as of right now, it's very successful. It provides a lot of land, a lot of opportunities for folks that are looking to develop in the area. Well, what we want to do is construct that vision here in Lawrence, and that's what I'm excited about. Some of the lots that we're going to have available, the green initiatives that we can tie into that to provide opportunities for folks to want to come to Lawrence, Kansas. I mean, I'm happy that Bartlett and West had the opportunity to work with the folks in Topeka, but I'm a Lawrence resident. I live here. I work here. I want to see us succeed here, and this is a great step in that direction. We're heavily involved in KCADC, the Kansas City Area Development Council, and the folks there allowed me to share this information with you. It was something they used at a presentation recently at their quarterly meeting update, and it really illustrates the point of why I feel this is important, and this is a prime time to be looking toward the future. In April of 2011, there was 85 active projects in various different areas, manufacturing, bioscience, et cetera, looking to develop in the Kansas City region, Kansas City metro area. In April of 2012, currently right now there's 114, and that's even growing as we speak month by month. So there's a lot of folks really looking to do things in the Kansas City region. And the prime component of getting in the game, if you will, is having land. And having land that's available, pad ready is the word you keep hearing, so that how fast can we move in? How fast can we get through the process? What do you offer? Different types of things. Farmland Business Park, or what the new name may be in the future, really is going to provide that opportunity to give Lawrence to get a chance to get in the game. Again, the percentage of projects just within a year's time are up 33%. All of those sectors are growing. Really the only one area that they said was a little bit down, and that was by one project, was advanced energy. So, and this last slide here, and I know you can't read that, the blue, as of the end of April, were new projects that just come on board at KCADC, and the white are current ones that they're really active right now. So it really illustrates the point that there's a lot of folks looking, there's a lot of potential for a lot of different projects that may want to come to Lawrence, Kansas, if we can provide them an opportunity to do so. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to share just a brief bit really about some of the things we've talked about as a project team, and do want to leave you that I really have enjoyed, all of our team members have enjoyed working with city staff, because again, this hasn't been a consultant effort. It's been a team effort to look at a lot of these different components, and having folks from legal services, planning, public works, and folks like ourselves that work with developers on a regular basis in the same room to vet some of these ideas, what folks look at out on a regular basis, has really, what I feel, put together a pretty good plan here moving forward to provide some of these opportunities in Lawrence, Kansas. So with that, I'll open it up with questions, more questions for myself or any other members of our team or city staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the development team?
Green Acres has a good ring.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment? Okay. Any additional comments, staff? All set? What's the next step here? Where we go?
The next step is for us to initiate the plating process, which we would then direct the consulting team to work with staff to prepare a preliminary plat that would then go through the necessary approvals with the Planning Commission, and then eventually come to the City Commission. I want your permission to go talk to Douglas County. Kind of stepped over there, but there's a line basically where that cell tower is. That property then to the east is owned by Douglas County. East Hills Business Park was a cooperative venture with the city and Douglas County. The city did a lot of the infrastructure installation. Douglas County, I think Commissioner Amix was on the county commission at the time, or city commission at the time. involved, and when we were
Somewhere.
involved in
Somewhere,
Mayor was as well, maybe, when Douglas County bought that property. So Douglas County still owns that property where that cell tower is, and a little bit to the east. So what I've talked with Craig quite a bit, but haven't formally talked to the county commission. Need the county commission's blessing as well, because it's going to be a joint plat, city property, former farmland property, and then also the county-owned property there at East Hills Business Park to put that infrastructure in. What we've talked about doing, obviously, is the city's going to proceed with paying the platting costs, and then we'll be presenting to you a draft resolution creating a special assessment benefit district, where the city would pay the design consultants to come up with biddable plans for the road and the necessary infrastructure for that first phase. We would then bid that project and then be in a position to special assess the property. Obviously, we own all of the property, so we'll be paying those special assessments. The county, what I've told Craig is that we would do what we did at East Hills Business Park, which is we would defer the assessments on the county-owned property until we would end up with a final primary job tenant. We don't want to, I think the county wants to use that property for primary jobs as well. The only reason why the county would ever pay the special assessments would be if they decide to use it for something other than that purpose, and I don't think they have any plans for that. So that's our process from here in regards to platting and infrastructure. Once we then start getting legal descriptions, we'll be in place to ask you all to initiate rezoning of the property. We now have 3 industrial categories. I think we've looked at maybe IG for some of the northern property, perhaps IM for some of the southern tracks, but we want to look through all of those different categories and provide a recommendation to you. Obviously, one of the key things we need is a legal description, and it'll be easier to work off of plat than other things in regards to that. So you see us moving concurrently ahead on a number of aspects. I already touched on the West Star land exchange. We want to try and move that along quickly. We know that the intersection general improvements are underway as far as the design work as well. I see my job as trying to get you all out there with golden shovels sometime in 2013, breaking ground on bringing a primary job employer to this community. That's what we're going to try and do. And in order to do that, we've got to get the infrastructure in place. In order to do that, you see all the different things that we're on target to keep moving forward on.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, I may be getting a little bit ahead, but you mentioned the golden shovels. So the as far as actual perhaps renderings or getting somebody to draw some, once we zone it, we talked about potentially getting drawings done of the type of project we're actually wanting to see. Who knows, going as far as building a spec building. Is that kind of something that's in the works, the group's talking about?
I think it's a possibility. As we know that there is interest, and as Darren talked about, we know that there's interest in this property. And our process now of planning, I think, is borne fruit with a good plan. I mean, one of my sayings was, let's measure twice, cut once. I think we've done that. I think we've looked at it hard. I think we're now ready to proceed. And I think one of the next steps, Commissioners, is going to be, do we want to go ahead and start moving some of the dirt to get pad-ready sites? I think that's absolutely one of the things that we want to do. And I think we want to talk with the business community, perhaps about partnerships on a building for that might be built on speculation. But we also know that we've got companies that are interested in coming here as well. We've had some of those inquiries. We've talked to them a little bit about the property. Nothing publicly to announce. Nothing. We're not at that point. But we think that we're in good shape to be able to move along those lines.
Great. If I could just build the through the interview process with the new chamber executive coming in, who's in the audience tonight. One of the things that came up that Greg mentioned was certified sites, certified industrial sites. I don't know exactly what that means. I look forward to hearing more about it, but are we looking
as I understand it, and Greg may want to speak to that, is it's not just pad ready. I mean, we've got it so that somebody could come in and say, I've got a general site plan concept. We approve site plans administratively in the planning office. It's already zoned, the infrastructure is there, and it's ready to go for a certain type of a use. And I think that's what's meant by that, is that
Yeah,
we've
great.
got it ready to go for the business. I think that's one of the things we want to do, is we want to look at sites and say, I don't know if the term would be a dummy site plan, but a no-name site plan, where we'd say, if you put a 75,000 square foot building on this lot, what would it look like and how would it work? And how can we get ready for a business that wants to come to the community?
Sounds great. It's exciting.
Okay, other questions?
I have 2 requests. One, is there any way we can get a 3D rendering of these topographic features? Just not even on paper, but just a digital model. I don't know how hard it's going to be, but, and then 2, the same drawing with aerial photography as an underlay instead of the existing shadows, and I think it'd be handy to have, so it's easier for people who can't read maps as well to get a good understanding.
Can we do that? Yeah.
It's in the budget. I should ask, is that in the budget to provide me a 3D model of this? Because
We actually have completed a 3D model. When we interviewed for the project, it was very conceptual. We do have that, but our intent is to update that for use when we get to the final game, which is kind of waiting for your next step. If this is the lot layout that's preferred to move forward with and plat, we'll look at providing those items, yes.
more of a relief is what I'm looking at, because I think when people are looking to where we could, what's really useful right now and how much effort, topographic lines mean a lot to certain people and, very little to others, so that would be helpful. And then the other question is, had you talked to this county about maybe a rendering where the lot lines on the west side of East Hills kind of match up with our existing, and could they perhaps, combine at some point in time, where if we're not going to have a true differentiation between the 2 parks, whether or not we could offer that land in a larger scale. So say somebody wanted, 50 acres, that's pretty close. So, and it would be on a road that's already built, and we could back into it, and, theoretically, if it's clean, it could be ready to go. So, I mean, so that's something to talk with the county about, is whether, or DC, who owns
DCI does
DC?
not own any of this property.
Okay.
It's Douglas County.
Okay, so Douglas County owns that. So,
That's my understanding.
so if they do, then that would be a great kind of team effort. So the 3D model, and then maybe adding up some of that so they could have a total acreage that might be able to be combined if somebody wanted to combine both lots, all 3 lots.
Those are good suggestions, and Vice Mayor, one of the things that, in discussions with Craig, is that, they want to be our partner with this, and we've looked at the property not so much as to who owns it, but who's eventually going to own it, which is that primary job employer. So we've tried to not look at just the ownership lines, but saying, let's get the best lot layout possible on that site.
Yeah, because if we had someone come along and those lots aren't big enough for East Hills, or they're not laid out properly, but there's a road in place, there's infrastructure in place, and there's a lot adjacent to it, we need to be ready to go. Yes, we can do that
We
now.
can
Here
combine
we
them and
go.
do all those things,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, and that might give us some breathing room if somebody does come along and wants a lot that size. Sorry, go, just.
The one thing I think that we know about this process is that we need to give the prospective company options, and we need to be flexible. But we also want to have the infrastructure in place. So we've got to make those decisions wisely, but then be able to be flexible and say, no, we can combine lots, or if you don't need as big a lot, we can reduce it and still be able to use those things. So we're trying to have both of those things in the right balance.
Perfect, thank you.
So I've got a very specific question. I'm looking at the map here under the staff memo, and it's regarding lots 6, 7, 8, and 9, which fronts on K10. So maybe that's for you, Darren.
I'll back this up so we can.
And once you get there.
I'll go back forward because we're going to have so many pictures on it.
There you go.
Right there.
That right there.
Okay, so from just driving by there, it seems like it's flat, relatively flat, compared to a lot of the other parts of the site.
Right.
In the front part of that park. And if we're anxious to move forward on this, which I certainly am, and we talked about moving dirt, how much dirt has to be moved in lots 6, 7, 8, and 9 in order to have buildable lot pads there?
Okay. I don't have an exact answer for you right now because some of the preliminary studies that we have done have looked at putting pads on there. But what we need to do is tie that in with how the road actually would work in terms of the design speed, how you would have access and so forth. But for example,
Now, which road, when you say that, which road?
the road being the east-west road, because
The frontage road?
this is the main connector road.
Inside
Here's
the park.
O'Connell and K10 going north to a new intersection,
Okay.
and then it would run eastward and tie into existing
Right.
Greenway Circle. So when we create this road, it goes to Commissioner Vice Mayor Devers' point of looking at it in a flat plane. It is very deceptive in terms of how it works with the actual elevations, because you're low over here at the intersection,
Right.
and then you would, gradually go down to where the creek is, rise quite a bit up into an area that would be a high point in here, because here's your tower.
Right.
Again, slope down to the creek, back up to the top, then back down. So you're kind of going up and down. A good example of that is some of the slopes on Castle Drive, the southern portion of Bob Billings, for example. As you get closer, it elevates and moves in different directions. You're going to have some of that out there, and in order to tie a pad site into that and look to get a buildable area, because the one misconception I don't want to provide is that when you look at this entire lot here, is that it's buildable from border to border. Because there's going to be some locations, in order to create a buildable area that I'm showing something as such, you're going to have some transition zones on each side that we can cut to provide fill, and back and forth. That goes to the graphic of the yellow, red, and blue, to try to find a balance, but not have to move 400,000 cubic yards of earth to make that happen. So,
Well, here's where I'm going with all this, is that we're anxious to demonstrate to the world that we're for real with regards to locating people here. It seems to me like if we, because it's at the front end of the lot, you try to identify a lot or two lots that are the most easily gradable and start working on it to make those lots marketable immediately. And I think that just makes a statement that says we are for real and we're going to get this thing done. And, this is just the beginning, and get out of our way because it's going to happen. So, that's where I'd like to see us focus our attention on is if once we get this infrastructure along as far as we can, to really get out there and move some dirt and get it ready.
and I would agree, because as you go to and I'll use this in this instance, into this location back through here, when you start to get a little bit further back on the site, really that folks don't see day to day, because you drive by K10, you get back there, there's a lot of items back there that would need to be cleaned up to really be, if you bring a tenant from Europe or wherever they're coming and they look at a pad site and there's half retaining walls, pipes sticking out of the ground, broken rail, it might give them a different perception. But I definitely agree, as you look along the front there, first thing you see is to try to really have that aesthetic appeal, because when you pull up, just like first impressions are everything. This is a quality park. I think, to your point, let's make that statement and make it bold day one.
Well, that's where I'd like to aim. I'd like to move towards that goal, to really get that first lot graded and sold and see a building grow. So, any other questions?
Just a comment, Mayor, if I could, and I appreciate the work that the team's done, and along with our staff and everybody that's involved. I think a couple things. Eileen, I think it's neat that we talk about all the sustainability and green efforts that can happen, at the old farmland side, and Vice Mayor and Commissioner Cromwell, all the work that we've gotten out of you guys and expertise that you have, we really appreciate that. But to the team, and I think one of the important parts that was brought up here is we look at this and we look at the flexibility of being able to work and putting the infrastructure in and to prepare for that site that the mayor just brought up, and being able to do these things in a timely basis. I think and extending East Hills into one super park kind of thing, I think is an employment center, I think is something that this entire community can be proud of, and the work that's been done here in making sure that we look at this kind of development, and this is a location, we look at the entry into the community, and this just makes all the sense in the world. So I appreciate all the work that you've done, and what I really consider to be solid recommendations on what this development should be. So thank you all very much.
Anybody else? Thank you for the information. Charge. Next item on the agenda is to recess into executive session for approximately 45 minutes for the purpose of discussing property acquisition and consultation with our attorney. Need a motion? Cromwell, Carter, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Recessed, or executive session, 45 minutes.
just move to extend the executive session 20 minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Carter, Cromwell, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries 3-0 to extend the executive session for another 20 minutes. It's like a walk-in in here now.
Probably.
All right, we're reconvening. We've been in a executive session with the attorney-client privilege based on property acquisition and other attorney-client relationship questions. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Is anyone here for public comment? Seeing none. Future agenda items are the next item on the agenda.
Commissioners, we have public comment on 2012 budget issues scheduled for next week. We like to have that early in the process. State law provides for a public hearing when you're about ready to adopt the budget. We like to have public comment on budget issues early. In discussions with Commissioner Cromwell, I think we are ready to present the staff recommendations on next steps for sanitation. So if we've got a reasonably clear agenda, Mayor, that's what I'm going to recommend that we put on.
That's fine.
Next week as well.
So. Fine. All right.
You'd also think, and I know Leslie and KT are here, we are working to see if we can get the 900 New Hampshire project scheduled for the 19th. Should be able to let the public and you all know about that here in a couple of days. We're still waiting to get the financial report from Springstead Advisors. As soon as we've got that and it's in some intelligible way to understand it, we'll proceed with that.
Probably 2 weeks from tonight. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the agenda? All right. Next item is commission items. Any of the commissioners have anything they'd like to bring up?
Mayor, I guess I do. With the retiree attraction and retention task force recommendations, I'm wondering then, as far, should it be an agenda item maybe then to look at first, I guess, the formation of an advisory board, or whether or not we decide to utilize an existing one and sort of re-energize it? I think that's probably just an agenda item. The others are something to probably work with staff to come back to us. More specifics on the position, that sort of thing.
Budget considerations? So we've got study session coming up. Is that the time to consider it, or?
We can. We can also have it for regular agenda item as well to receive public comment, but as I understood, the general direction of the both the City Commission and the County Commission would be to explore any financial impact, staffing.
Right.
And we'll definitely have at least that as an agenda item for your budget study session on the 19th.
Great.
But we may not have all of the things defined for that, but at least you'll have an opportunity to talk about that budget issue. But you're also, Commissioner Carter, talking about the advisory board, which would be a resolution to create it, and I think probably city-county advisory board. So why don't I talk to the county administrator and see what they're going to do on that and report back, but definitely report back no later than the 19th.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Calendar?
Mayor, the 3rd of July is a Tuesday. We plan a short agenda that night, or can we meet earlier in the day?
Why don't we have the 3:30 in the afternoon meeting?
I don't know if I can do it at 3:30.
4 o'clock?
I was saying about 5, something like that, 4:30. I know that's still far out there that we can't really estimate what all
What's your
is gonna be on
comfort?
the agenda.
What's your comfort time?
Well, I don't know how full of an agenda you want to have the night before the 4th, but
Not very.
just going to ask.
I don't see any problem with scheduling it earlier in the day as long as the commission is there. We can just we can try and just pay bills and have non-controversial items. I think the one thing one thing you've historically wanted to do is avoid having something that's susceptible to a lot of public input during the day when you historically meet during evenings. I mean, you all can decide, you're the appropriate barometers on that, so.
Well, I don't think we ought to have anything controversial, because first of all, if you do it in the evening, the regular time, some people may be out of town and would want to have been here, or I think it ought to just be a real minimal, quick agenda, and we ought to do it.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock's fine with me. 5 o'clock? Okay, tentatively, we'll meet at, on July the 3rd at 5 p.m. here for a quick meeting. Any other calendar? Okay, it's a favorite part.